Hey everyone, we're working hard to get our first 1,000 subscribers, sign up and you won't regret it. I used to think the phrase, finding myself, was harmless. Like a weekend alone. A new hobby. A therapist. A haircut that costs too much. Not a suitcase slammed shut at 6:12 a.m. on a Tuesday while my kids were still asleep. Not a note on the kitchen counter that wasn't even addressed to me. Just a sentence written like a caption under a selfie. I can't keep shrinking to fit this life. I stood there in the blue light from the microwave clock, reading it twice like the second time would change the words into something normal. Something fixable. Behind me, the house was quiet in that fragile way it only is when children are home but not awake. The kind of quiet that feels like a promise you're about to break. My oldest, Wyatt, was 7 then. He could already read. My daughter, Hallie, was 5 and still slept with one leg outside the blanket like she was ready to kick a nightmare out of the room. And my wife, Riley, was gone. At first, my brain tried to save me. She's cooling off. She'll be back by lunch. This is a dramatic phase. Then my phone buzzed. A photo text from a number I didn't recognize. Riley in sunglasses, head tilted like she'd been practicing freedom in the mirror. Next to her, a guy who looked like he still got carded at restaurants. Bright smile. Clean jawline. That kind of hair that takes time. Under it, one line. She chose happiness. Respect it. I stared at that message until the edges of the screen blurred. Not from tears. From the sheer audacity of a stranger speaking like he was writing rules for my life. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I didn't even breathe right. I walked down the hallway and opened the kids' door and watched them sleep, as if I could memorize them before someone took them away. Because that was my next thought. Not heartbreak. Not rage. Custody. Riley didn't just leave me. She left the structure of us. She left the calendar on the fridge. The pediatrician's number. The nightlight batteries. She left the burden and took the story. When the kids woke up, I didn't tell them everything. I told them the only safe truth. Mom's going to be away for a little while. Wyatt asked if it was because of him. Because he'd gotten in trouble at school the week before. That's what kids do. They turn adult choices into punishments for themselves. No, I said, too fast. Not because of you. Never because of you. Hallie asked if Riley was coming back for bedtime. I said I didn't know. That was the first time I realized how many times you can say I don't know in one day without your throat closing. Riley didn't call. She posted. Long paragraphs about awakening and boundaries and choosing yourself. Photos of crystals on windowsills. A book with a title about being the hero of your own story. Then a link to a private, women's self-healing circle that was, somehow, also taking paid sign-ups. It would have been laughable if my kids weren't asking for their mom at night like she was a missing stuffed animal. The first time she finally answered a call from me, she didn't sound sad. She sounded busy. She didn't ask about Hallie's nightmares or Wyatt's stomach aches. She didn't ask if they were eating. She talked like she was reading from a script she'd been given. She needed space. She needed light. She couldn't be the villain in my version. I didn't argue. I made myself calm because I'd already started learning what men learn too late. If you look emotional, you look dangerous. If you look angry, you look guilty. So I asked one question. Are you coming back for the kids? There was a pause. Not a thinking pause. A choosing pause. And then she said something that made my hands go cold around the phone. She wasn't coming back. Not right now. She said she'd rebuild her foundation and then we'd reassess. Like my children were a lease. Like you could pause motherhood and pick it back up when your aura felt ready. 3 weeks later, I got the official thing in the mail. Not divorce papers. A petition for temporary custody. Riley was asking the court to give her primary custody and move the kids 2 states away. And she listed her address. It wasn't an apartment. It was a retreat house. And the name on the mailbox wasn't hers. It was his. The young guy in the sunglasses. Tristan. At the bottom of the petition, there was one sentence that turned my stomach into a knot I couldn't undo. She alleged I had anger issues that made the home emotionally unsafe. I'd never hit her. I'd never hit anything. But I knew, in that moment, that facts weren't going to be enough. And I knew something else too. Riley wasn't just leaving. She was trying to erase me. I got a lawyer the same day I got the petition. Not because I suddenly trusted the system. Because I didn't trust Riley anymore. My attorney was an older woman named Denise with a voice like sandpaper and eyes that didn't blink much. The kind of person who makes you feel both protected and exposed at the same time. She scanned the petition once and said, "This is sloppy." I let myself hope for exactly 3 seconds. Then she added, "Sloppy doesn't mean harmless." Riley's retreat house turned out to be an actual business. They sold weekend rebirth intensives. They did breathwork, sound baths, They had a group chat full of women typing like they were all the main character in a movie and the world owed them a better ending. Riley was suddenly an assistant facilitator. Tristan was operations. Translation: he ran money through apps and made sure nobody asked questions. The first time I saw them in person after she left, it was outside family court. I expected Riley to look torn, nervous, ashamed. She looked upgraded. New clothes. New posture. A calm smile that wasn't for me. Tristan stood a little behind her like a bodyguard who'd never been in a fight. Riley didn't greet the kids. She waited until she noticed Denise and then performed the kind of sad face that cameras love. It made something sharp and ugly crawl up my spine. Wyatt, who usually ran to her when she came home from work, stayed glued to my leg. Hallie reached for Riley once, then stopped midway like her own body didn't trust the situation. Riley crouched and touched Hallie's cheek like she was blessing her. Then she stood, turned to me, and said, quietly, like she was being noble, something about not doing this here. I didn't answer. I'd promised Denise I wouldn't. But inside my head, I was screaming. You already did it. You did it at 6:12 a.m. in our kitchen. The judge granted me temporary physical custody because Riley had left the state without a stable residence before filing. That mattered. Barely. Riley left the courthouse smiling anyway. Because she had a new plan. It rolled out slowly, like poison. First, she posted more. About co-parenting with someone who refuses to heal. About protecting children from emotional volatility. People I didn't even know started watching my social media. Old classmates, distant cousins, random women with inspirational usernames. Then my workplace HR requested a meeting. A complaint had been filed. Anonymous. It described me as controlling and unstable and prone to outbursts. None of it was specific enough to prove false, which is the genius of modern accusations. If you can't disprove it, it lingers. Denise didn't look surprised. She's building a story, she said. Stories win when evidence is thin. So I built evidence. I kept a notebook of every missed call, every cancelled visit, every time the kids asked for their mom and then cried in a way that was too quiet. I saved messages. I took screenshots. I requested school records. Doctor records. Anything that showed I wasn't falling apart. And still, I felt like I was losing. Because Riley wasn't just fighting for custody. She was recruiting an audience. Then, about 4 months after she left, I heard through someone's husband's coworker's cousin, small towns are like that Riley was pregnant. It hit me like a physical shove. Not because of jealousy. Because of timing. Riley had been gone long enough that she should have known what motherhood felt like without the daily parts. She should have known how lonely it gets when the freedom is just silence and bills and pretending you're thriving. Instead, she was starting over. With Tristan. With a new baby. Like our kids were a draft she decided not to submit. When I confronted her, through Denise, not directly, Riley's side sent back a message full of polished words. Riley was expanding her family. She was creating a healthier environment. She intended to introduce the children to their new sibling when the energy was safe. Denise read it and snorted. Energy, she said. Of course. I didn't know what to do with the rage. So I turned it into routine. Lunches packed. Homework checked. Nightmares held. I became the steady parent not because I'm heroic. Because somebody had to be predictable in a world where their mother had become a moving target. Then the baby was born. And 2 weeks after that, the first crack appeared. Not in Riley. In Tristan. I got a message request from an account with no profile picture and a name that looked fake. 2 words. Call me. I almost ignored it. Then a second message came in, and it made the room tilt. It was a photo. A screenshot of a bank transfer. From my joint account with Riley, an account I thought I'd closed months ago, sent to a number I didn't recognize. And in the memo line, it said, Retreat House, Rebirth. Below it was one sentence. She didn't just leave you. She's been taking from you. And Tristan isn't who you think he is. Denise told me not to respond. So, of course, I responded, just not recklessly. I asked for proof. What I got over the next 48 hours felt like watching someone dismantle my life with a screwdriver. The anonymous account belonged to a woman named Marin. She wasn't a hater. She wasn't trying to gossip. She was one of Riley's former clients. And she was angry because she'd finally realized she'd been scammed. Marin sent documents. Screenshots. Voice notes I didn't play until after the kids were asleep. It wasn't just a healing circle. It was a funnel. They'd lure women in with empowerment language, then upsell them into levels. Level 1, Level 2, Inner Flame, Sovereign Mother. Each level cost more. And if you hesitated, you weren't ready to heal. You were attached to scarcity. Tristan managed the payments. Riley collected trust. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the coaching. Marin sent a screenshot from a group chat where the facilitators encouraged women to document their partner's flaws, phrase ordinary disagreements as emotional abuse, and, this is the part that made my skin go cold, prepare custody narratives. Not advice like, protect yourself. Advice like, build your case. Denise's eyes narrowed when she saw it. This is coordinated, she said. We subpoenaed what we could. We requested records. We pulled financial statements. That's when we found it. The joint account. Riley had reopened access using an old authorization form I'd signed years earlier when we refinanced the house. The bank should have flagged it. They didn't. Over 6 months, thousands had been drained, small amounts at first, then bigger. It wasn't just to the retreat house. Some went to an LLC that belonged to Tristan. And the name of that LLC made Denise sit back in her chair. Tristan's not his first name, she said. He'd changed it. He'd moved states. And he'd done this before. Denise found public records, a civil case in Arizona, a restraining order in Nevada, a fraud complaint in Colorado. Always the same pattern. A spiritual business. A charismatic woman as the face. Tristan behind the scenes. Money disappears. Relationships explode. He leaves town. Riley thought she'd found herself. Tristan had found a new host. The next court date approached fast. Riley filed again, requesting more custody time now that she had a stable home and a supportive partner. I almost laughed. I almost cried. Instead, Denise did something that felt like chess. She didn't just defend. She baited. We filed a motion asking the court to compel financial disclosures related to Riley's business, because it affected child support and stability. We attached a small sample of the transfers, just enough to make Riley panic. And panic makes people talk. Riley broke her silence that night. Not through Denise. Directly to me. She called at 11:47 p.m. I stared at the name on my phone like it was a ghost. I didn't answer. She called again. Then again. Finally, she texted. Please. It's urgent. Denise told me not to engage unless we recorded and kept it clean. So I answered on speaker with Denise listening in from my kitchen table. Riley didn't start with the kids. She started with herself. She sounded different. Not enlightened. Not calm. Rushed. Pressed tight. She said she needed to explain some things. She said there was a lot I didn't understand. She said Tristan had made mistakes, but he wasn't the monster I was trying to paint. I stayed flat. I asked where the money went. There was a pause. A real one. Then she said something that made Denise's pen stop moving. Riley said Tristan had handled the finances because she'd been overwhelmed postpartum. Postpartum. That one word carried a whole hidden story. Because Riley had been acting like everything was perfect. Like the new baby was her proof that she was thriving. But her voice didn't sound like thriving. It sounded like fear. Then Riley said, he's not letting me leave. Not dramatic. Not performative. Just factual. Denise mouthed one word at me, careful. I asked Riley where she was. She wouldn't say. I asked if the baby was safe. She said yes, then her voice cracked and she added, I don't know what he's capable of. I could hear something else behind her, movement, maybe, or a TV, or just my imagination. Then she said the line that made the whole call feel like it had been building toward one ugly reveal. He says if I don't get custody of the kids, he'll take the baby and disappear. Denise's expression hardened into something I'd never seen on her face before. Because now it wasn't just betrayal. It was leverage. Riley had set my life on fire to chase a fantasy. And now she was calling because the fantasy had teeth. Before I could respond, Riley whispered, he's coming back, like she wasn't supposed to be speaking. And the call ended. Denise leaned forward. We're not just winning custody, she said. We're exposing a scheme. My phone buzzed again. A new text from Riley. One sentence. He knows about the old papers you signed. He says he owns part of the house now. Denise stared at that message. Then she looked at me and said quietly, he's going to try to take everything. I didn't sleep. Not because I was spiraling. Because everything finally made sense, and that's the kind of clarity that keeps you awake. Tristan wasn't just Riley's younger boyfriend. He was a parasite with a plan. And Riley, whether she admitted it or not, had helped him get close enough to bite. Denise moved fast. We pulled the refinance documents. We pulled the deed. We checked county records. Tristan had filed something called a quitclaim deed, not fully completed, not legally clean, but enough to cause chaos if you didn't know what you were looking at. He'd used Riley's access to paperwork and my old signatures from years ago to try to create a story of shared ownership. A paper monster. The kind that doesn't have to be real to ruin your life for a while. Denise didn't panic. She smiled in a way that scared me more than anger. Good, she said. Now we have him. Because here's the thing about people like Tristan. They don't stop when they're comfortable. They stop when they're documented. Denise coordinated with a financial crimes investigator she knew through another case. We sent Marin's evidence. We sent the bank transfers. We sent the civil history. And then we did the one thing Riley didn't expect. We offered a settlement. Not to be nice. To lure. Denise sent Riley's attorney a proposal. I would consider a flexible visitation schedule if Riley withdrew her relocation request and provided full financial disclosure for any business and any property claims. It was bait wrapped in reasonableness. And Tristan took it. Because Tristan couldn't help himself. Within 24 hours, Riley's side responded, with documents. Sloppy documents. But they included something Denise had been waiting for, an email chain with Tristan's LLC name, his alternate legal name, and instructions about moving funds. It was like he'd handed us the map and circled the treasure. The next court hearing was the kind that looks boring in a calendar but changes your life. Riley showed up with makeup that tried to hide exhaustion. Tristan showed up too. He wore a suit that didn't fit his shoulders right, like he'd borrowed adulthood for the day. The judge started with custody. Then Denise stood and said we had a financial issue affecting stability, child support, and safety. The judge sighed like he'd heard it all before. Then Denise presented the transfers. The reopened account. The coaching screenshots. The civil history under Tristan's other name. And finally, the attempted property filing. Tristan's face changed in stages. First confusion. Then annoyance. Then that tight stillness people get when they realize the room is no longer theirs. Riley started crying, real crying, not performance, when the judge asked her if she knew money had been taken from the marital account. She didn't deny it. She tried to explain it. And that's when the wow part landed, not as a twist for drama, but as the natural end of the trail. Riley admitted something under oath that I'd suspected but never proven. Tristan hadn't just helped her leave. He'd approached her first. At a women's empowerment event months before she walked out. He'd fed her the language. He'd introduced her to the group. He'd told her she was wasting her life, being a wife and mother. He didn't steal her from me by accident. He targeted her like a mark. And she let him. Because it felt like being chosen. The judge didn't yell. He didn't need to. He granted me full physical custody and limited Riley to supervised visitation until a full evaluation and financial investigation could be completed. Tristan tried to speak. The judge shut him down. Then something happened that still plays in my head like a scene from a movie. A bailiff approached Tristan with a calm hand on his arm. Not violent. Not dramatic. Just final. Tristan stiffened. Denise didn't look surprised. Because while we were in court, the investigator had moved. And Tristan, who loved paperwork when it benefited him, had left a trail too clear to ignore. Riley didn't look at Tristan as he was led away. She looked at me. Not with anger. Not even with regret, exactly. With the face of someone realizing the thing they burned down isn't rebuildable. Later that night, she called again. But this time, it wasn't frantic. It was small. She didn't ask for me back. She didn't demand forgiveness. She asked, quietly, if she could see the kids. Denise told me the supervised center would set rules. I told Riley I wouldn't block a safe relationship. But I would never again hand her the keys to their stability. Then I did the most satisfying thing I've done in this entire nightmare. I changed every password. I locked every account. I refinanced a loan. I kept the house. And I took my kids to breakfast the next morning like we were allowed to be normal again. Wyatt asked, careful, is Mom coming home? I told him the truth I can live with. No, I said. But you're safe. And I'm not going anywhere. Hallie leaned her head on my shoulder and didn't ask again. And that's how it ended, not with revenge that's loud, but with justice that's quiet. Riley didn't lose everything because the universe punished her. She lost it because she gambled her family on a stranger's script. And this time, the story didn't go to the person who performed it best. It went to the person who showed up every day and kept receipts.